4 weeks and counting now. There's still no sign of a resolution to the strike by employees of this company, MTN, in South Africa. Now, the company has actually gone as far as having to turn away customers who are coming, looking to buy handsets and get other services from the company as a whole. But is this perhaps a symbol, a microcosm, if you will, of the wider labour relations problems that beset South Africa's economy right now? We're having disputes between companies and the government and unions, on the other hand, left, right and centre. We'll be exploring that issue live from Johannesburg tonight. Welcome to Global Business Africa. Here's what's coming up. Nigeria charges bank officials over fraud in attempts to tackle an apparently deep-rooted vice. And traditional candle makers in Egypt are fighting against the invasion of imports. Now then, a strike at the South African mobile phone operator MTN is now in its fourth straight week. The latest victim is the supply of new mobile phones. Workers there are demanding higher pay in what is the first strike to hit Africa's biggest single mobile phone operator since the company was set up in 1994. MTN now has to actually turn away customers hoping to buy handsets at some of its stores due to supply shortages. Earlier today, Reuters quoted Shepa Matlao, a national organizer at the Communications Workers Union, as saying that a meeting with MTN management is planned for later this week. But in the meantime, the strike will continue. MTN employs roughly 6,500 people in its home market. It trails its rival Vodacom, however, in terms of total subscriber numbers. Sumitra Naidu joins us now live from Johannesburg with more details on this particular story. Sumitra, let's get some background here. What exactly prompted this strike in the first place?
Well, Rama, alongside money, there seem to be a few issues to do with working conditions. Striking employers are unhappy about working the night shift. Some complained about working on public holidays and over weekends and not being compensated fairly. But the main issue was that of bonuses. MTN paid a 4% bonus this year, which some employees felt was too low compared to previous years. They went on strike demanding a 16% bonus. They've since lowered that demand to 12%. They've also lowered their wage demand from 10% to 8%. Rama?
Indeed. The Communication Workers Union, however, also wants all performance indicators to be essentially dropped from that 8% wage offer which the company had made. What's the argument for that?
Well, the union simply believes that MTN is acting unfairly. It believes the company is using the performance management system to contain costs, so it won't have to pay everybody those increases. So staff that fail to meet the performance targets at entry-level staff, because they are fairly new, won't qualify for these increases. The union believes that this is an unfair labour practice and is demanding that all employees across the board receive that 8% increase, as opposed to MTN paying only those who qualify.
Indeed. A couple of weeks ago, however, it seemed like the deal between South Africa's government and public sector union was essentially unravelling over these clawback provisions. Are public sector unions going to go on strike or go to court?
Well, the clawback clause has become quite a contentious issue, and yes, it seems like strike action is on the cards now. Public sector unions have pulled out of that wage agreement, refusing to budge on the 7% increase that they agreed upon. But government says that it's too late now. The clawback clause will be implemented, and noted that it was totally legal and justified as it was in the previous agreement signed in 2012, and workers received more money as inflation was overestimated. Now, the Bargaining Council is seeking a legal opinion on the clause and said it would report back by the 29th of June. But the unions are adamant that it agreed on 7% and it will not accept the 6.4% or anything else below the 7% that it agreed with government on. And this is now the amount that they will actually get, the 6.4%. They're not happy with that. So the unions are now consulting with their members on possible strike action ahead of that announcement to come from the Bargaining Council. And they're likely to go on strike in the next 2 weeks, of course, if that legal opinion isn't in its favour.
Indeed. Finally, Sumitra, it does seem, given all these wage talks that are going on, government, the mining sector, telecommunications, as we've just spoken about, it seems like South Africa is sitting on quite the powder keg. What are the key wage talks we need to look out for?
Well, you know, wage season, as it's called, is always one to watch. There's just a number of strike action that we try to avoid every year. But I think the big one that's pending at the moment is the municipal workers' strike. That's the big one. The union declared a dispute with the local government association last week after wage negotiations there deadlocked. The union is demanding an 11% increase. Local government is only offering 5.9%. Now, the South African Municipal Workers Union represents 160,000 workers. We've had strike action in the sector before, and it was terrible for the economy. Obviously, lots of municipal services will be affected there if they go on strike. The gold sector wage talks are also one to watch out for. It's another sector with thousands of workers, and we have seen a lot of problems in the sector before. Workers, if they go on strike here, could also have a huge impact on the economy. Wage negotiations there will start next Tuesday. The National Union of Mine Workers is looking for increases in excess of 80%, while the new rival, AMCO, obviously smaller in the gold mining sector, they're looking for a basic wage of around $1,500. So no doubt those will be two strikes, or wage talks rather, that we'll be watching closely.
Indeed, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for that. That's Sumitra Naidu live in Johannesburg. Right, on to Kenya's President, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. He's proposed an extraordinary AU summit be held before the end of the year to try and revive the African peer review mechanism. He says this issue should always be on the AU's agenda. The APRM was the brainchild of two former presidents, Thabo Mbeki of South Africa and Olusegun Obasanjo of Nigeria. They set it up in 2003, the idea being to encourage conformity among African states in political, economic and corporate governance, and to hopefully improve standards right across the board. The thing is, the mechanism hasn't quite worked out as planned. It's suffered over the last few years with as many as the 35 signatory countries not paying their contributions. Africa's attempts to attract large-scale FDI often tends to suffer due to credibility issues, and the mechanism is a way of holding leaders to account.
The APRM process is a cornerstone in Africa's efforts to realize good governance and social-economic development. It is unprecedented in the history of governance in Africa and remains a unique innovation, indeed a first of its kind. In an effort to revitalize the APRM, I wish to propose that the forum convenes an extraordinary summit together with all our strategic partners to discuss strategies for rejuvenating the mechanism, strengthening the role of the panel of eminent persons in enforcing compliance as earlier contemplated in the mechanism, mobilization of resources for effective APRM delivery, and raising the profile of the APRM as the authoritative governance index for Africa.
On to Nigeria now. The country's anti-corruption body has charged senior officials from the Central Bank of Nigeria and some commercial lenders following their arrest in connection with an alleged 8 billion naira scam, just roughly about $40 million. Now, analysts say this case demonstrates the deep-rooted challenges of rooting out corruption in the country's banking sector, especially as President Muhammadu Buhari takes on his term focused heavily on fighting graft.
This way. Nigeria's central bank regularly withdraws old and torn notes from circulation to replace them with new ones. In this latest scam, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission says that the 6 central bank officials and 16 commercial bank staff recirculated, defaced and mutilated notes intended for destruction by substituting them with newspapers neatly cut into naira size. The alleged fraud was uncovered last September when a routine audit revealed irregularities in the branch at the southwestern city of Ibadan. Officials, however, said the alleged scheme had no impact on money supply or inflation, but could dent the reputation of the central bank.
The amount involved was mind-blowing. So you start wondering, how did this take place? And are the people currently being charged to court? Are they the only people involved? Because I'm beginning to wonder if that amount of fraud could take place, then there must have been control breakdown, and that control breakdown wouldn't have been at just the middle level. It could have come all the way, it could have gone all the way up or down.
The case came days after President Muhammadu Buhari was sworn in, with a crackdown on corruption being one of his central election campaign pledges. Investors are cautiously optimistic that any crackdown on corruption by Buhari will stimulate investment and boost flagging growth in the oil-dominated economy.
It has implications for the economy. There's more money in circulation because if you're destroying that, you should reduce money in circulation, in quotes. I mean, because you know the amount. But what happens is that the money that's supposed to be destroyed is actually coming back into circulation. It's increasing the amount of money in circulation.
The EFCC, a law enforcement agency with powers of arrest, investigates crimes such as fraud, money laundering and corruption, was set up in 2003, partly in response to international pressure to tackle endemic graft. Human rights groups and diplomats have criticized it in the past for failing to bring any senior politicians to justice, despite a string of high-profile arrests reported in the papers. Penina Karibe, CCTV.
Right then, a quick run through the markets here for you. Most of the bourses that we track started the week off on a fairly weak note, excepting, of course, the Nigerian Stock Exchange. That was up by over 1/4 percentage point. Some interesting corporate news coming out of the Kenyan market, however. Uchumi has kicked out its CEO. Now, the story is a bit fishy here, but Mr. Siano, the outgoing CEO, says that he tendered his resignation to the board, and he says they gladly accepted it. The board, however, says that's not the case. They fired him for completely different reasons. They have, of course, instigated an audit into how exactly 900 million shillings raised in a right issue last year was spent. Gabon opened a multi-million-dollar manganese processing plant. And the Muslim world gets ready to usher in the holy month of Ramadan in under 48 hours.
This is the first year that Africa will have more foreign direct investment than aid. And it's like the tipping point in terms of changing the way the continent is perceived. And I think this summit very much responds to that call. Now, whether it can materialize what is being announced is something that we'll have to check and see whether it happens.
Right, then on to an infrastructure project of gigantic proportions now. Egypt's government says a second Suez Canal channel will be open for business in early August as part of its plans to expand the volume of trade between Europe and Asia. Egypt's economy has been struggling to recover from political unrest unleashed in 2011. At the moment, it's plagued by double-digit unemployment levels and quite a few jitters about fiscal policy and red tape from international investors. Work on the $8 billion canal started about 8 months ago, flanking, of course, the existing 145-year-old waterway. The existing canal earns Egypt just over $5 billion a year. With this new canal making two-way traffic of much larger vessels possible now, the government expects annual revenues to hit $15 billion a year by 2023. Now let's get to the latest developments over there from Yasser Hakim, who's live in the Egyptian capital. Yasser, the chairman of the Suez Canal Authority says the second channel is 80% complete right now. What else is left to be done?
There's the last piece of work is concerning the dredging of the canal, removing the sand from the corridor, the waterway, to be able to help the vessels going through the Suez Canal. And then just the trials, they will do some trials to make sure that it's ready and operating for the inauguration in August. So that's only what's been left now.
Indeed. For those of us who don't understand how the canal works, I mean, we know it takes roughly 22 hours to get a ship from one end of the canal to the other. So what effect will this second channel have in terms of cutting transit times?
Yes, it will cut the transit time significantly by even going down from 22 to around 8 hours, and then you've got only 3 hours of waiting from 8. So you have more than 45 vessels that can go through the Suez Canal when it's operating now, up from around 12 to 15 vessels, and that's because you have it two ways, and it's bigger, and it's even more secure with the latest technology. So this way it will help more trade and the release of more, not just trade for Egypt, but international trade that is going through the Suez Canal to many countries around the world. And also there will be services put there. That's why the income will increase. There will be storage services that's not there now. You cannot store any products. You cannot assemble products. There will be some small industries around this area that will also work on giving services to the vessels as they pass by.
Indeed. You've actually just touched on my next question here. The forecast annual revenues of this expanded canal are about $15 billion a year by 2023. Beyond extra traffic and, of course, the industrial activity and the industrial parks that will be built alongside the canal, what are the planning assumptions behind that number?
Yes, just like I said, there will be those new services that will be provided to the vessels. The problem is that the canal now, as it was operating for the last few years, was just like it's like you're just passing through a road. There's no services. It's very slow. It's a narrow road, not as deep as now. It will also be much deeper, so bigger vessels can go through. Right now, it will be more of a service station. It will be more of having an airport rather than just passing through some traffic jam or traffic lights in the street. So there are going to be a lot of services working on both sides for the canal.
Indeed. Finally, yes, I mean, given the sheer scale of this project and how much it has cost, has there been an assessment on the impact it has had on the domestic economy, especially during the construction phase?
Yes, the estimate is that it can even go as much as taking up around a third of Egypt's economy. There will be 3 or 4 huge industries zones, free trade areas. Russia has bought 2 million meters of land for an industrial zone, a Russian industrial zone. China as well, a huge piece of zone that will be all made for Russian and Chinese factories, each in their own different zones. There will be hotels there. There will be living compounds for living there. There will be factories. So it's not just about having a canal, but they're building a whole community. The whole economy is built around this canal. It will be more of a hub for economy, international trade through Asia and Africa, rather than just a passing waterway. The government has estimated, and it said that it is already opening, sending applications for anyone who wants to apply to work there, job opportunities for 1 million jobs in the area in all spheres, from construction to engineers to technicians. In all fields, there are around 1 million jobs, and this is something badly needed in the economy right now, with the unemployment rate at around 15%.
Indeed, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for the update. That's Yasser Hakim live in Cairo. Of course, by the 6th of August, that's what the target date for the official opening of the Suez Canal. Should be interesting to see exactly how it works out over the second half of the year. Now, the government in Algiers is working to ensure that the less fortunate can also celebrate the Islamic month of religious observance, Ramadan. A food distribution initiative is delivering thousands of bags of food across the country to those who need it the most. The thing is, not everyone is celebrating, since food prices have risen significantly compared to last year.
Bags of food are being loaded up, ready to be sent off to those who need help. There's flour, semolina, coffee, cooking oil, and much more. The operation, Straw Basket of Ramadan, delivers bags of food worth around $51 US, which can feed a family for about 15 days.
Last year, we distributed 1,750 straw baskets. This year, it's 1,250. There is a big difference and an increase in poverty.
Today, the team is visiting Merzouk Rekia.
I did not make the request. It's my son who did it. He is like me, sick.
While recipients appreciate the help, some NGOs are concerned that the program is being used to conceal the full extent of poverty.
Simply because all the objective factors to take a census of poor people in this country and take care of them properly are not respected. And by its name we say straw basket of Ramadan, which means that if we really identified with poor people and take care of them, it's only for the month of Ramadan, and so the rest of the year they are not taken care of.
Meanwhile, in neighboring Niger, Muslims face a particularly difficult Ramadan with rising food prices. The nation is suffering from soaring food inflation. Imported products such as rice, wheat flour, sugar and vegetable oil, as well as locally grown fruit and vegetables, have increased rapidly in price. Islamic leaders have called for traders to reduce their prices to help those who are fasting.
Maybe a faction of Muslims haven't understood that this is the best moment to reduce prices to diminish the suffering of everyone and allow everyone to bless the month of Ramadan. But sadly, we haven't understood because it's like our bidding is leading to soaring prices.
Traders, however, have been quick to defend themselves.
The early days of Ramadan coincides with a shortage of locally produced potatoes, yet it is a meal that is quite common in homes during Ramadan. We are forced to import, and thus the increase in price of this particular product. As you can see, this is a variety that comes from Morocco. Consumers should understand us. It's not our fault.
Despite those economic arguments, many Muslims in Niger will find this year's Ramadan financially difficult. Celestine Carone, CCTV.
On to the West African nation of Gabon now. It's opened a multi-million-dollar manganese processing plant. The idea being to diversify its economy a bit more and move away from its addiction to oil revenues. This plant will enable Gabon to process manganese ore locally instead of exporting the much lower value ore.
Gabonese President Ali Bongo cut the ribbon as he officially launched the multi-million-dollar manganese plant in Maonda. Gabon, the world's third largest manganese producer, will now have its own metallurgical complex to process the metal rather than exporting the metal raw.
It allows us to create employment opportunities that did not exist before because they were elsewhere, in that our ores were directed to factories that were not in Gabon. The fact that we are participating in an important effort of transformation allows us to create new employment opportunities.
The metallurgical complex of Maonda, installed on a 50-hectare site, cost $286 million. Constructed by French mining giant Eramet, the plant is already operational and ore is already arriving for processing.
Behind me, you can see an extraction operation for manganese ore. We are on the Bangome Plateau in a zone we call B7. The hydraulic shovel that weighs 180 tons is extracting the ore and loading it into trucks. We call them dumpers. They can carry up to 100 tons of ore in their dumper beds.
The CMM plans an annual production of 20,000 tons, and the plant will help Gabon attain its target of becoming the world's top manganese producer. Leslie Marungu, CCTV.
Quick run through commodity prices here for you. Crude, of course, still continuing with its yo-yo movement up today, down the following day. Well, down in this particular case, down to about $62.50 a barrel. Of interest to us, however, is the platinum industry in South Africa. Amplats says it expects first half profits to be 20% higher than they were this time last year. Headline earning per share at about 72 cents compared to 60 in the last in H1 2014. We'll be looking at traditional candle makers in Egypt. They are in a Darwinian fight for survival. Their stories coming up next. Welcome back. Traditional Egyptian candle makers have been plying their trade in the streets of cities like Alexandria for centuries. Right now, they're growing fears that the rise of cheaper imports will put this historic industry and its skilled artisans right out of business.
This traditional artisan has been making candles for 35 years, inheriting the business from his father. While many candles in Egypt are now made by machines, he uses the traditional method, passed down through generations.
We hang the strings on the wood. Most of our work is handmade. Some people have begun using machines, but we are still keen on handmade because some candle types can be made by machine. Candles used at baby showers, lighting, and weddings must be handmade. It's dependent on the handicraft. So we make the strings and hang them here on the wood like this, and we start dropping them here, and it takes one layer after the other until it takes the shape we want, and we wrap it and sell it to the customers.
One candle costs £1 Egyptian pound, the equivalent of 13 US cents. One unit, which consists of 28 candles, takes about an hour to make. With Ramadan fast approaching, this is usually a busy time, with many shoppers buying candles for their traditional Ramadan lanterns. As each year passes, however, he's finding it increasingly difficult to compete against cheap imports. Despite his concerns, he wants to continue the family tradition, teaching his 13-year-old son Mohammed the craft. Mohammed has been helping his father in the workshop during summer holidays since he was 8.
It's all about marketing. Here in Egypt, the imported goods have become more available. Of course, the imported goods are competing with the local businesses in a large way. And of course, the prices are similar, so naturally the customers will prefer the imported goods.
So while the flame will continue to linger on at this business for a while yet, the future of the traditional industry looks increasingly uncertain. Andrew Thompson, CCTV.
And finally, Dubai now has the Middle East's first cat cafe to add to its growing list of frankly odd attractions. The cafe is called Alluromania, essentially meaning a passion for cats. Customers can book a table and enjoy your tea and your coffee in the company of your very furry feline friends. The business was born after Iman Al-Olaki and his sister heard about cat cafes elsewhere in the world. Iman keeps about 20 cats at the cafe and has another 10 at home. The owners hope to open more cat cafes in other parts of the Middle East, despite the popularity of the cafe amongst cat lovers in Dubai. Iman admits the business ran into quite a bit of skepticism when it first came up. Right then, quick run through currencies here for you. Let's see exactly what your money has been doing for you across the board. The South African rand taking a bit of a hit against the American dollar in trading today. That was down by about a third with regard to the dollar. But of course, we'll keep tabs on these developments moving forward for you right here on the program. Here's what we're working on for tomorrow. We'll be looking at shea butter production in Senegal. Farmers are reaping a lot more and they're finding new markets in Asia. All that and plenty more is in the pipeline, but that's it for this edition of the program. As always, I'd like your feedback and your ideas on what we do around here. Global Business Africa at cctv.com is the email address to use. And as always, our Facebook page, CCTV Africa, and Twitter is always available for news 24/7. We'll see you over there. Thank you for watching. I'm Ramadan.